Welcome back to React Native Radio Podcast. Brought to you by nerds. Well, two nerds, Jed and I. Episode 239, ProGuard with James Hamilton.
I don't think people realize, Mazen, but you're pretty tall. Like, you're 6'6", and you have I don't know what that is in non-freedom units, but it's pretty tall. What is it in centimeters?
I think it's like 2 meters plus, something like that.
Little over 2 meters. Okay,
Yeah.
I was expecting a little more precision than that, but let's go with that.
Sorry, it's been a while.
You're very American now after your time abroad, but also you have a very wide wingspan. You're like 6'8". From the very end of your hand, if you spread your arms very wide. And you're also built like an athlete because you are an athlete. So I do mention all the time you were a pro soccer player, but I realized that you've never really told any soccer stories. Someday we're going to have to go through all of your like semi-pro and pro days, but give me a fun memory of when you used to play.
Yeah, so the one memory, kind of we were chatting about this and it reminded me of it, was kind of towards the end of my high school career. I knew where I was going for college and kind of coming to the US. And it was, I want to say it was like a playoff game. It was either quarterfinals or semifinals for like to end off our season in high school. We had a pretty good team. We would play some semi-pro teams in Nigeria. So I grew up in a town called Jos. So not as big, but our town professional team, which I played for a little bit growing up, they were the champions of the Premier League. So pretty good scene in Nigeria in our town. So it was, I want to say it was tied, and I made a save, and I looked upfield and I saw one of our really fast strikers, and I punted the ball as hard as I could, and it bounced over the center back's head, and he ran onto it and scored.
Oh, wow.
And I know we won because we ended up getting to the finals and losing 2-1 in the finals.
Oh, so, wow. Yeah.
It was a great memory getting us there with that assist. And as goalkeepers, you tend to just make the saves and you don't really score. Well, rarely, if that, score a goal.
Yeah, totally. It's so, I don't know, people may know this, but I'm also a goalie at a very much lower level. I play ice hockey. I play at our local rec league, and I play goalie, and I have gotten assists. What's funny is I've never noticed it. Like, I've just looked at the box score, like at the end of the season, and be like, oh, I have 3 assists. How did I get assists? Like, but often it's like someone shoots, it like ricochets off, my team takes it. And in hockey, they are very kind of liberal about the assists that they'll give. So you can have one person take the puck, go quite a ways up, and then give it to someone else, and they take a little bit, and then they shoot and they score. And the previous 2 players will get an assist. So yeah. I kind of like that because, as a goalie, it's very difficult, but that's pretty fun. And, it's always fun. Like, as a goalie, you're so focused on defense that, it's fun to be involved with the offensive side of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we've probably alienated half of our audience by talking about sports, but we will move on. I'm Jamon Holmgren, your host and friendly CTO of Infinite Red. I'm located in the Pacific Northwest of the USA. I live in just north of Portland, Oregon, with my wife and 4 kids on 3 acres. I'm joined today by my intelligent co-host, Mazen. I'm using intelligent this time to offset the jock stereotype, I think, that we just came up with here.
We need to find a good balance, right?
Right, you do, yeah. Mazen lives in Durham, North Carolina with his wife and newborn boy. He is a former pro soccer player, as I said, and coach, and is a senior React Native engineer also here at Infinite Red. Today we have a guest too, and I'm excited about this. I'm always excited about our guests, but this one's kind of fun. It's a little different, actually, this time. Not a React Native developer. It's James Hamilton. James is a software engineer working on ProGuard and DexGuard, which we're going to be talking about, at Guard Square, which is located in Leuven, Belgium. Is that where you're actually located, James?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. So so you're actually in Belgium, but you're originally from London, if I remember correctly here.
That's correct, yes.
Also, you were a senior research fellow for CERN. Do you say CERN or CERN? I guess I've never heard it said outside.
So yeah, you say CERN. I was there for 3 years. That was a very interesting time and nice to live in the
I bet.
in Switzerland with the mountains, chocolate.
Oh yeah, totally. That sounds awesome. I could probably do a whole podcast on that. You also have a PhD from the University of London, which means I should be calling you Dr. James Hamilton. Like me, you've also been interested in computers for a very long time, and it says here that your first computer was an Amstrad CPC 464, which I've never heard of before.
Yeah, this is an old computer. It's a British computer, so.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Probably it didn't make it to the US.
Yeah. So this was like Commodore 64 days, right?
Yeah, yes. Similar kind of computer.
That makes sense. Yeah. That's pretty fun. I actually have in the corner of my office, I have the first computer that my dad ever got, which was a 286. So it's, I actually don't know what brand offhand. I'd have to go look at it, but it went through a house fire, so it no longer works, but I do still have the shell of it, basically. This episode is sponsored by Infinite Red. Infinite Red is a premier React Native design and development agency located fully remote in the US and Canada. If you're looking for React Native expertise for your next React Native project, hit us up. You can learn more on our website, infinite.red/React Native. And don't forget to mention that you heard about us through the React Native Radio podcast. Let's get into our topic for today, and it is shrinking your app with ProGuard. So this came onto my radar because in the React Native documentation, there's a very brief mention of a tool called ProGuard. And I mean very brief. It's just like a paragraph in a link. And it talks about how you can enable ProGuard to reduce the size of your Android APK file, which is, of course, the file that you would ship to an actual Android phone. It is optional. It can, now they say slightly reduce the size of the APK. I feel like you're going to probably take exception to that characterization, but we'll get into that. It does this by stripping parts of the React Native Java bytecode and its dependencies that your app is not using. So it does like static analysis of your bytecode, not just like your Java code, but the actual bytecode that is generated, and can strip stuff out. They do put in a little warning, make sure to thoroughly test it because there's sometimes some configuration that needs to happen. You don't want to break things, obviously. And enabling seems, at least from the documentation, to be as simple as enable ProGuard in release builds equals true in your build.gradle. So that was kind of how it came on our radar. And I was like, what is this? What is this ProGuard? Like, where did it come from? Who built it? What's going on here?
So it's a brief explanation, but I guess in the documentation they're quite accurate in what they say. So it's a tool that can reduce the size of your APK. I would say, the word slightly there is maybe it depends. So obviously it depends on your app, maybe how many, for example, third-party libraries you use. Or maybe how much of your code in your app is Java code and how much is JavaScript. So that's one thing about ProGuard is it's shrinking the Java bytecode.
Java bytecode part of it. Yep.
It's not touching the JavaScript part. But then it depends then how much code you have, not just of your own Java bytecode, but also these third-party libraries, which maybe use, for example, one function. So you pull in a library to use one function. And then suddenly your APK expands by megabytes because you just needed this one function. And ProGuard can strip out all of that other unused code for you.
That's really cool. Is it, so in the JavaScript world, we would probably refer to something like that as tree shaking. Is that kind of a similar concept?
Yeah, so that's one feature that ProGuard does, basically tree shaking. Yep.
Oh, okay. Tree shaking for your bytecode. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So it does tree shaking, which is then using based on, like, for example, unused classes methods. And then it also does bytecode optimization as well. So it will actually look at the actual instructions, statically analyze them, and then determine which bits it can remove because they're not used.
That's pretty cool. So if I built a pure Android app, or even just a module, third-party module that went through Java, let's say I had a function that I completely forgot about. Maybe the function was, I don't know, checking something. Let's say that wasn't used. Eventually I was like, what, we're not going to use this function anymore. I moved away, used a different function. Will it go as deep as finding that function, knowing that it's not being used, and dropping it?
So basically, what ProGuard does is it looks at the code, it starts at certain points in the code, and then tries to follow all of the link. So if you call a method, it will follow that method call to the method, and then it will look at the code in that method, and it will try to then collect all of the code which is used, and then it does this tree shaking thing where then the other code basically falls away because that's not used.
That's awesome. Okay, that's a great feature, and I can see how that can strip, because a lot of the third-party libraries I know that we use in JavaScript specifically, one that comes to mind is Lodash. You might import Lodash for one or two functions,
famously.
And, yeah, exactly. And now you have this huge, I use huge in quotes, library out there that if it was trimmed down to just those two functions would be so much lighter. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Tried yesterday just creating a React native sample, I guess just following the documentation in the most basic sample, and running ProGuard on that saves 1 megabyte.
A megabyte, just right out of the box, just like turning it on.
Yeah, it's just whatever the sample does when you create it with the command line tool.
Well, that right there kind of like sells itself. You turn it on and it works. It just reminds me, Joe Armstrong, who created Erlang, said, you wanted a banana, but what you got was a gorilla holding the banana and the entire jungle.
That's true.
So once you run ProGuard, you get the banana. That's what you get.
Yeah.
How long have you been working on ProGuard for, James?
So I've been working on ProGuard, a Guard Square for 3 years now. So actually this month is my 3-year anniversary at Guard Square.
It seems like a good fit for what you've studied. My notes have that you've studied, static analysis of bytecode, and have a lot of other kind of experience within this realm.
Yeah, so at university, I did a PhD in static analysis. There I was looking at communities in code. So I was looking for the connections between different parts of code, and if you have dependencies between lines of code or instructions, how that looks if you think of it as a community, so like a kind of a social network of instructions.
Oh, no way. I've never thought about that before. That totally makes sense, though.
So when I left CERN, I was looking for a new job, and I wanted to do something related to my PhD, and this was a perfect fit.
I love the React Native, people community that is out there, and I feel like it's awesome that you have these collisions of ideas between native developers and often web developers, JavaScript developers. One of the things that we sometimes get wrong is we don't think in terms of, we think in terms of the tools we know. We think about tree shaking the JavaScript side of things. We think about all the optimizations we can do over there. We don't think about often the parts and pieces that can really, or the tools, I should say, that can really make your native app faster, because that is a whole component of this. It's marrying two different things together. But I do think it's really cool that, this is Android only. I don't know if you have done any iOS stuff at this point, or is it just the Android side?
So ProGuard itself is not Android only. It's for Java bytecode. So actually, it's also for Java desktop server applications as well. And,
I see. So it's the whole Java ecosystem.
So that's actually where ProGuard started.
Makes sense.
But you're right. It's not for iOS.
Yeah, makes sense. Then Gradle at least used to come with ProGuard enabled. I don't know. There's some mention of an R8 compiler as well. Can you give us kind of a little rundown of what's going on over there? Because I hadn't heard of the R8 compiler before doing some research for this episode.
Yeah, so basically, ProGuard used to be part of the Android build system since I think about 2012 or something like that, 2010, something like that. In the last few years, Google have been building their own compiler, which includes also a tree shaking function and optimizations. So that's what R8 is, and that's the replacement in the Google build system for ProGuard. But it's completely compatible. The rules,
Use the same rules.
The rules are the
things
same.
Like that. Yeah.
The configuration, you say enable ProGuard still.
Funny.
But ProGuard is still there. So so you can enable ProGuard in your app as well. You can choose between R8 ProGuard. They both had the same similar kind of tree set shaking features.
And your company, the company you work for, GuardSquare, did a comparison of it on the website, which was interesting. It doesn't seem like there's a huge difference between the two. Probably Google just wanted more control, and that's why they're pushing their thing. But ProGuard's totally still a viable thing. Is ProGuard an open source project?
Yeah, so ProGuard is open source, and it's been that way from the start.
Nice.
So, and I think one of the nice things about GuardSquare is that it was built on top of ProGuard, basically. Like,
okay, yeah.
So ProGuard started as a hobby project like 20 years ago, and then out of that came DexGuard, which is the Android security tool.
Mm-hmm.
Out of that came GuardSquare. So now we're protecting with DexGuard billions of apps around the world.
So that's a whole nother thing, and we do want to get into DexGuard, because I DexGuard. Let me pronounce it correctly here. I said DexGuard, Rolodex. I don't know. But it's a security thing, and again, another thing that we need to make sure that we are doing as React Native developers, that we're properly securing our apps. I have one more question. I realize I'm kind of hogging the questions here, Mazen, but
no.
It just occurred to me: Are you looking at like AI analysis of this stuff, like using actual AI tools like TensorFlow or anything like that for these types of things?
So far, no, we haven't been going in that direction. The core static analysis code in DexGuard there is just looking at the code and then figuring out how it works statically.
Right. So it may not be a great application for AI in this case, because it's probably a little bit more of a, I don't know how to describe it, but it's a little more of a pure function there, where you can just look and see, is this used or not? And then if not, remove it.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I know you mentioned DexGuard does the security aspect. Does ProGuard have any security features within it, or just what we're calling tree shaking here?
Yeah, so ProGuard is all about shrinking optimization. So there's tree shaking, and then there's also the bytecode optimization as well. So the actual code optimization.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is the name obfuscation.
Okay.
It's more of a kind of security by accident feature.
Cool. Okay.
It reminds me of Uglifier for JavaScript, which basically would take pretty JavaScript code and then compress it down and change all the names into something ugly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's basically what it does, and it's one layer, but it's not going to stop someone from it's not going to stop a reverse engineer from understanding your app.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that brings in DexGuard.
Yeah. Can you go into DexGuard? Like, what is DexGuard? How does it compare to ProGuard? Do they work together?
Yeah, so DexGuard is a security tool. So that's the products that GuardSquare sells for protecting Android applications. It's compatible with ProGuard, so the same ProGuard rules can be used. But there are a lot of other features on that, and there's a lot of layers of security that are applied on top of the basic name obfuscation that ProGuard can do. And DexGuard also does dynamic protection as well. So at runtime, it can tell if someone is for example, trying to hook a function to try and understand dynamic attack on apps.
That's very interesting. So it will go through everything in your entire app, control flow as well, a bunch of different things. Code virtualization. What's code virtualization? I'm looking at the list here.
Well, this is a very, very nice feature of DexGuard. So basically, it will, when you apply DexGuard, it will generate a virtual machine with its own instruction set, and it will convert some of the code that's originally in your app into this new instruction set and execute on this virtual machine in your app. And it will do that for lots of different bits of code in your app. So that all over your app, there are different kind of virtual machines, virtualized instruction sets.
Interesting. So it's like mini virtual machines running within the JVM, really, right? Or whatever is the current.
Yeah. So then for a
virtual
reverse engineer, then they have to understand these generated instruction sets.
Right.
And it's random as well. So these are generated randomly at real time.
That's pretty amazing. So what types of apps might benefit from, obviously ProGuard everybody can benefit from. Just turn it on, go do that. But like DexGuard, obviously that's more of a paid product and more of a thing that like who should be like, yo, CTO, we need to get DexGuard on our app.
I think many apps can benefit from DexGuard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably something that some people don't even think about. They're developing this nice app and it's all working nicely, and then suddenly someone has cloned their app or hacked their app or
right. Well, someone like Coinbase, I know they're on React Native. They should be using DexGuard. Obviously, you can't say if they're a client or not, but that's totally an example. Anybody who's doing anything financial or medical,
health,
like
definitely, yeah.
Like that makes sense to me. So yeah, totally.
Anyone that kind of just wants to secure their users' information, especially if you're collecting that user's information, that could be very helpful.
Another use case is also gaming as well, to prevent against cheaters, for example.
Cheaters, yeah.
But good to know. This is the Robin favorite question here, usually on the show. But what sucks about ProGuard? What's something that ProGuard needs to work on?
I think one of the frustrating things that a lot of people find is the configuration. The configuration and the warnings that are produced by ProGuard. So ProGuard tries to be kind of helpful. It tells you that there are some missing classes that it doesn't know about. Because to do the analysis, it needs to know about the whole application, all of the classes that are used, all of the libraries. And it will tell you that it's missing this class, this class, and this class.
Yeah.
Sometimes there can be thousands of these warnings. And this is something I think that can be improved. And then the configuration itself. So basically, you need to configure ProGuard because, for example, if you're using reflection, then ProGuard, when it does its analysis, it cannot follow these trails of method calls, for example, because the name of the method may be generated at runtime dynamically.
Yeah.
If you're using reflection.
Yeah, exactly. So then ProGuard cannot know if something is used or not. So even if a method is used, if you're calling it by reflection.
Explain to people who don't know what calling by reflection means. Explain like I'm 5 here.
So basically, you can call a method Java or in Kotlin, in JavaScript, I'm not sure, by giving it a name as a string, for example. So you can build this string at runtime, and you can tell Java to invoke this method. You give it the string, which is the name of the method, and you tell Java, invoke this method, and the method is invoked as usual.
But it's not like it's not like you can't just look and find that symbol in the code. In fact, so just to put it in terms for the JavaScript developers, let's say that you wanted to be able to call on a string to uppercase or to lowercase. But what you did was you had a string that was 2 variable case, and then the variable could switch between lower or upper depending on some if statement somewhere. So you would have then it's building in maybe string interpolation, it would create 2 uppercase or 2 lowercase, and then you put it in brackets. Like you would take your string, you'd put or after your variable, you'd put a square bracket and put the variable in with the name, and then just invoke it with parentheses at the end. And that would then do what it's supposed to. It's going to call 2 lowercase, 2 uppercase, but you can't just search your code base for 2 uppercase to find all of the 2 uppercase, because this is going to call 2 uppercase, but you're not going to find that string 2 uppercase in your code base. So that's I think essentially what you're talking about, James, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so then the same is true in Java, and then ProGuard cannot then determine that 2 uppercase or 2 lowercase need to be kept because it cannot see that. So then those methods may be removed.
Makes sense. And then your app would crash.
Yeah.
So
that's where the configuration comes in. So you need to tell ProGuard with keep rules to keep something. So you basically say keep class whatever the method, like the name of the class, and then the method, the descriptor of the method, the name of the method. It looks similar to Java code, the configuration format. It's a bit different because you can put wildcards in.
One thing that I think is kind of cool in the rules is you have a "why are you keeping" option. It's like, why is this still there? Like, do I have something somewhere that's calling this? I think that's pretty cool.
And this can actually be quite useful because you can end up with a lot of rules, like hundreds or more rules, and not only your own rules, because libraries can ship ProGuard rules inside the Android AR file.
Yeah, and this to me sounds like make sure you test your app in production too before you ship it out, because very easily something that's working in development, again, ProGuard usually would probably enable it only in production once the bundle, we're talking about shrinking the APK. So at that point in time, so if you're running it in React Native, you might not run into any issues because ProGuard hasn't run its features yet. So test in production before you ship it, and you never know. That's actually pretty cool. And I like the different rules that you have. That it makes it very, simple to use, but also gives you a lot of control over how it functions, still giving you all its features at once.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty cool.
And as so I said, this is one of the things that's maybe a bit frustrating about ProGuard. And so we have some tools to help with this. So last year we released the ProGuard Playground, for example. So this is our online tool where you can upload an APK or jar file, and you can type in some rules there, and it will show you what entities, classes, methods, fields in your app match those rules.
Oh, that's fantastic. That is really cool. You just drop in your .apk or .jar file, and then it will just kind of like scan it, and then you can play with your rules to see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, for sure.
I'm adding that to the show notes. That's something I think every developer should play with once they have their APK.
So that can save also a lot of time instead of if you're trying to figure out which rules you need. You can do it interactively with the ProGuard Playground instead of typing a rule, building your app, putting it on the device, running it to see if it works or not, to see if the rules match.
Yeah, and that shortens the feedback cycle, feedback loop tremendously. So ProGuard is on GitHub, and I believe, is it written in Java? Actually,
it is. Yes. Yeah.
So it itself. Do you run ProGuard on ProGuard's binary? That's what I want to know.
It's possible. I think there is even a configuration for doing that in the ProGuard repository.
That's great. I love those types of kind of like self-referential or dog fooding or whatever.
Yeah.
That's pretty fun. Well, I think it's like, I feel like, I don't know, like with this podcast, I want to expose React Native developers to tools that are maybe not within their normal wheelhouse, that maybe are sort of in a little bit considered sort of like the dusty corners of React Native. Like what is this thing that's kind of lurking over here? I know it's here for a reason, but why? What is it? So I'm really glad you came on, James. One last question here. What does the future hold for ProGuard? What do you have kind of in your plans?
Well, I think one of the things that we've been working on a lot in the last couple of years is ProGuard Core. So what we did 2 years ago, we took the core analysis and framework that both ProGuard and DexGuard use, and we split that into a separate project. And so this way we give the tools that ProGuard and DexGuard use to other people that they can also use to build their own projects. And we've been adding a lot of new code analysis functionality to that project recently. because we also use that core library as part of our app sweep service as well.
Nice. That's awesome. Very cool. Well, I think that's all we have time for today. But thanks so much, James. Really awesome to have you on. I know there's a lot more that you could talk about here, but we always want to leave the listeners wanting more, right? If you'd like to nerd out more about React Native, check out my Twitch stream. I'm on rn.live. You can also find it on YouTube, youtube.infinite.red. I'm actually streaming to Twitter live as well. I found a way to do that. That was kind of cool. You can also join our Slack community at community.infinite.red. We have over 2,000 React Native developers in there. You can check out the new Twitter community, which has been really cool. rntwitter.infinite.red. Some people don't have access to this, including Robin for some reason. So sorry about that if Twitter doesn't give you access, but
Didn't we figure out the solution to that?
I thought so, but then it didn't work. Yeah.
Okay.
So, whatever. Where can people find you online? James, where are you on Twitter?
So I'm on Twitter. It's JAG_Hamilton.
Perfect.
You can find me there.
Awesome. So people can hit you up with further questions if they have any. Mazen, where are you at?
Mazen Chami.
And you can find me at Jamon Holmgren. You can find React Native Radio at React Native RDIO. Thanks again to James for joining us today. As always, thanks to our producer and editor, Todd Worth, our assistant editor and episode release coordinator, Jed Bartoski, our designer, Justin Husky, and our guest coordinator, Derek Greenberg. Thanks to our sponsor, Infinite Red. Check us out at infinite.red/React Native. Special thanks to all of you listening today. Make sure to subscribe on all the major podcasting platforms. I don't know why I say all the, do they really need to subscribe on every single one of them? Probably just one, whatever your favorite one. Yeah. Just go find React Native Radio on there and subscribe. You know what? I'm okay if you subscribe on ones you don't use either. Inflate those numbers. It makes us feel good. We'll see you all next time.